The blue dwarf sun cast long shadows through the dense canopy of Ephira's ancient forest. Commander Alric Voss stood at the edge of the landing pad, his weathered face bathed in the ethereal glow of twilight. The small spaceport of Azure Tide wasn't much, a collection of prefabricated structures and landing pads carved from the wilderness. But it was home now, 3 years since he'd resigned his commission with the Galactic Alliance Navy. And still, the silence of this frontier world sometimes unnerved him. A transport ship descended through the atmosphere, its engines howling against the quiet evening. Alric's hand instinctively moved to the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a reminder of the Orion crisis and why he'd chosen exile on this remote planet. The ship wasn't scheduled, which meant emergency medical transport. As the Frontier's medical coordinator, that made it his business. "Commander Voss," crackled his comm unit. "Unscheduled medical arrival. Distress beacon from Sector 9. They're requesting immediate assistance." Alric was already moving toward the landing pad. "Prep the facility. I'm on my way." The transport's hull was scorched black, evidence of a harrowing journey through some kind of radiation storm. As the ramp descended, 2 humans stumbled out, supporting between them what appeared to be a small, wrapped bundle. One of the humans, a woman with singed hair and soot-covered face, looked up desperately as Alric approached. "Please," she gasped. "We found it, floating in the debris field near the Orani Belt. The rest of its kind. They were all dead." Alric's medical scanner was already out, sweeping over the bundle. What he saw made him freeze. Inside the thermal wrap was not a human child as he'd first assumed, but something else entirely. A small, frail being with translucent blue skin that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Its anatomical structure was unlike anything in the Alliance database. "What is it?" he asked, his training kicking in despite his shock. "We don't know," the male survivor answered, his voice hoarse. "Some kind of new species, we think. Our ship detected a distress signal, and we found their vessel torn apart. This little one was in some kind of stasis pod. The others—" he shook his head. "There was nothing we could do for them." Alric gently took the bundle, feeling a strange warmth emanating from the small body. The creature's eyes fluttered open, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on its delicate face. They were a deep, iridescent purple, and they fixed on Alric with an intelligence that took his breath away. "It's dying," the woman said quietly. "Our medical equipment couldn't make sense of its physiology. The Alliance regulations say any unknown species must be—" "I know what the regulations say." Alric cut her off. The Galactic Alliance had strict protocols about unknown alien species, especially after the Orion crisis had nearly wiped out 3 star systems when a previously unknown pathogen spread through the colonies. Standard procedure would be quarantine, followed by extensive testing that would almost certainly kill such a fragile being. The creature made a soft, whistling sound, like wind through hollow reeds. Its small hand, 4-fingered with translucent webbing, reached up and touched Alric's scarred cheek. A strange, cool sensation spread from the point of contact, and for just a moment, the chronic pain that had plagued him since his injury subsided. Something shifted inside Alric in that moment. A memory of another time he had followed regulations to the letter, and lost everything that mattered. The screams of his squad as the ship broke apart around them. The faces of those he couldn't save because he'd waited for proper authorization. "Fill out your report," he told the survivors, his decision already made. "Say the alien didn't survive transport. I'll handle this." The woman's eyes widened in understanding. "That's against—" "I know exactly what it's against," Alric said quietly. "Now go get yourselves treated for radiation exposure." As the survivors were led away by his medical staff, Alric wrapped the alien child more securely in the thermal blanket and slipped away from the main medical facility. His private quarters were attached to a small research lab he used for frontier ailments, off the grid, away from the prying cameras of Alliance oversight. The alien child's breathing was shallow, its pulses of blue light growing dimmer. Alric knew he was risking everything: his position, his freedom, possibly even the safety of the settlement if the xenophobes in the Alliance Council were to be believed. But as he laid the small being on his examination table, he couldn't bring himself to care about the consequences. "Hold on, little one," he whispered, gathering his medical equipment. "I'm not losing another one. Not today." 3 weeks later, Ulrich stood in his laboratory, reviewing the latest data on the holographic display. The alien child, whom he had begun calling Zira after finding markings on her stasis pod that resembled those letters, floated in a modified Bacta tank. Her condition had stabilized, but only just. Every conventional treatment Ulrich had attempted had failed or made things worse. Her biology was simply too different, operating on principles that defied standard medical understanding. "What am I missing?" he muttered, scrolling through the genetic sequencing he'd managed to compile. The door to his lab slid open with a soft hiss, and Ulrich quickly switched the display to frontier disease statistics. Dr. Sayuri Nakamura stood in the doorway, her sharp eyes immediately taking in the room. As the frontier's only xenobiologist, she was brilliant, methodical, and far too observant for Ulrich's comfort. "Working late again, Commander?" she asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "You've been rather reclusive these past weeks." Ulrich tried to appear casual as he shifted his body to block the view of the Bacta tank, which was partially concealed behind a partition. "Just catching up on reports. The new settlers from Proxima 2 have brought some interesting parasites with them." Dr. Nakamura hummed noncommittally, her gaze drifting around the lab. "Indeed. Though I find it curious that you've requisitioned advanced genetic sequencing equipment for intestinal parasites. Equipment typically used for unknown species classification." Ulrich felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Nakamura had always been too smart for her own good, or for his. The frontier presents unique challenges. Better to be over-equipped than under... "Of course." She placed a datapad on his desk. "Which is why I thought you might find these research papers interesting. They detail the biological adaptations of aquatic species in low-gravity environments. Purely academic, of course." Before Ulrich could respond, a soft, musical sound came from behind the partition, like crystalline wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Dr. Nakamura's eyes widened, and Ulrich knew the game was up. "That doesn't sound like any parasite I've studied," she said quietly. Ulrich considered his options in the split second he had to decide. He could try to bluff, but Nakamura wasn't a fool. He could threaten her, but that wasn't who he was. Not anymore. Or he could take a chance on the compassion he'd occasionally glimpsed beneath her clinical exterior. With a resigned sigh, he stepped aside, revealing the Bacta tank and its small, glowing occupant. Dr. Nakamura's breath caught. "Is that—" "Her name is Zira," Ulrich said simply. "Or at least, that's what I call her. She's dying, and I can't figure out why. Her genetic structure, her biochemistry, it's unlike anything in the database." Instead of the shock or outrage Ulrich had expected, Dr. Nakamura approached the tank with cautious fascination. "Extraordinary," she breathed, studying the child's translucent skin and the way the blue light pulsed beneath it. "A completely new species? Where did you find her?" "She was rescued from a destroyed ship. The only survivor." Ulrich watched Nakamura carefully. "If the Alliance finds out, they'll dissect her in the name of security," Nakamura finished, her voice hardening. "I'm familiar with their protocols, especially since the Orion crisis." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "What you're doing is highly illegal, Commander. You could be court-martialed, imprisoned, possibly worse." "I know. You've risked everything for this child. Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Alric's gaze drifted to the small being floating in the tank, remembering the touch on his scarred face, the momentary relief from pain. "Because following the rules cost me everything once before," he said quietly. "Because sometimes doing what's right means breaking the rules. And because—" He hesitated, feeling foolish, but speaking the truth nonetheless. "Because when she touched me, I felt something. A connection, like she was meant to find me." He expected mockery, but instead, Dr. Nakamura nodded slowly. "The bioelectric field readings from her cells are fascinating. There could be some form of energy transference occurring through physical contact." She looked back at the child. "Her cellular degradation pattern suggests her system can't process the oxygen levels in our atmosphere. She needs something else, perhaps a different gas mixture." Hope stirred in Alric's chest. "Can you help her?" Dr. Nakamura was already moving to his equipment, her fingers flying over the controls. "I've been studying exobiology for 20 years. Commander, if anyone on this backwater planet can help your illegal alien child, it's me." A rare smile softened her features. "And please, call me Sayuri. I think we're well past formalities now that I'm complicit in your treason." For the first time in weeks, Alric felt the weight on his shoulders lighten as he watched Sayuri begin her analysis. Zira's eyes, all three of them, opened and seemed to focus on him. The blue glow beneath her skin pulsed a little stronger, and Alric could have sworn it was in rhythm with his own heartbeat. The territorial patrol ship hung in orbit above Ephyra, like a predator eyeing its prey. From his vantage point at the edge of the settlement, Alric could just make out its silhouette against the evening sky, a dark reminder that the Galactic Alliance's reach extended even to this remote corner of space. "They've been up there for 3 days, Lieutenant Jan remarked, coming to stand beside him. As Alric's former subordinate from his Navy days and current second-in-command at the medical facility, Jan was one of the few people Alric truly trusted. "Word is, they're conducting a standard resource survey, but nobody sends a Harbinger-class patrol ship for routine work." Alric nodded, his jaw tight. "Who's in command?" "Captain Harlow." The name sent a chill through Alric's spine. Harlow had been his rival since the academy, a by-the-book officer who'd climbed the ranks through political connections rather than field experience. After the Orion crisis, it had been Harlow who'd led the tribunal that investigated Alric's actions, pushing hardest for a dishonorable discharge rather than the resignation that Alric had ultimately been granted. "He's requested a meeting with the Settlement Council tomorrow," Jan continued. "Says he has security concerns to discuss." Alric turned away from the sky. "Keep me informed of any developments. I've got to get back to the lab." The makeshift nursery Alric had constructed in a hidden section of his quarters had become increasingly sophisticated over the past 3 months. What had begun as a simple back-to-tank was now an elaborate life support system, carefully calibrated to maintain the unique atmospheric mixture that Sayuri had determined was optimal for Zira's physiology. And it was working. The alien child was not just surviving, she was thriving. Her once frail body had grown stronger, the blue light beneath her skin now a steady, healthy glow. She had even begun attempting communication, simple gestures at first, then a form of telepathic imagery that occurred whenever she touched Alric's skin. As he entered the nursery, Zira was floating a few inches above her cushioned bed, another ability they had discovered she possessed. Her 3 eyes brightened at the sight of him, and she made the musical chiming sound that Alric had come to recognize as laughter. "Hello, little star," he said, the nickname coming naturally. He held out his hand, and she floated toward him, her small fingers reaching for his. The moment they touched, images flooded his mind, impressions of safety, happiness, and something like familial affection. "I'm happy to see you too," he said, smiling despite the worry that gnawed at him. "Where's Sayuri?" As if on cue, Sayuri emerged from the small adjoining lab, datapad in hand. Her normally pristine appearance was disheveled, with dark circles under her eyes, betraying long hours of work. "Her cellular regeneration rate is remarkable," she said without preamble. "The samples we took yesterday have already developed into complex tissue structures. I've never seen anything like it." Ulrich watched as Zira floated back to her bed, amusing herself by creating small orbs of blue light that danced around her fingers. "Is that normal for her species?" "I don't think anything about her species is normal, by our standards," Sayuri replied, handing him the datapad. "Look at this genetic sequencing. Her DNA, or what passes for DNA in her biology, has an adaptive quality. It's almost as if it's still evolving, responding to her environment in real time." Ulrich studied the complex patterns on the screen. "Could that be why she survived when the others didn't? Some kind of evolutionary advantage?" Sayuri hesitated. "Perhaps. Or perhaps she was specifically engineered to survive. Some of these sequences show patterns consistent with deliberate genetic modification." The implication hung in the air between them. If Zira had been genetically engineered, it raised even more questions about her origins and purpose. "There's something else," Sayuri said, her voice dropping. "I've been analyzing the effect she has when she touches you, the bioelectric exchange. It appears to stimulate cellular regeneration. In theory, this could have significant medical applications." "Healing," Ulrich murmured, remembering the relief he'd felt when Zira first touched his scarred face. "Potentially, yes. But there's a problem." Sayuri's expression grew troubled. "Our equipment isn't sophisticated enough for the research we need to do, and some of the materials I've requisitioned are raising questions. Lieutenant Jan has been covering for us, but we're running out of time," Ulrich finished. "Especially with Harlow orbiting overhead." A soft chime from the communication panel interrupted them. Jan's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Commander, we have a situation. Captain Harlow has moved up his meeting with the Council. He's specifically requested your presence, and he's brought a xenobiology containment team with him." Ulrich's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" "They're landing now, 20 minutes, maybe less." Ulrich looked at Zira, peacefully playing with her light orbs, unaware of the danger approaching. Then to Sayuri, whose expression had hardened into determination. "Get her ready to move," Ulrich ordered. "Use the emergency protocols we discussed. I'll go meet Harlow and buy you as much time as I can." Sayuri nodded, already moving to prepare Zira's portable life support. "Be careful, Ulrich. Harlow isn't just a bureaucrat, he's dangerous." "So am I," Ulrich replied grimly, checking his sidearm before heading for the door. "So am I." The council chamber of Azure Tide was little more than a repurposed cargo hold. Its utilitarian walls brightened only by a few feeble attempts at decoration, native flora in recycled containers, and a crudely painted Alliance emblem on the far wall. Today, it was filled to capacity with settlement officials, nervous colonists, and the unmistakable presence of Alliance military personnel. Captain Harlow stood at the center of it all, resplendent in his pressed uniform, adorned with commendations Ulrich knew he hadn't earned. Time had not been kind to Harlow. His once lean face had grown jowled, his hair receding despite expensive treatments, but his eyes remained the same, cold, calculating, and fixed on Ulrich the moment he entered the room. "Commander Voss," Harlow announced, loud enough to silence the murmuring crowd. "How kind of you to join us. We were just discussing some concerning reports from this sector." Ulrich kept his face neutral as he took his place among the council members. "Captain Harlow, the Alliance's interest in our modest settlement is unexpected. We were told the next inspection wasn't scheduled for another 6 months." "This isn't an inspection, Commander." Harlow's smile didn't reach his eyes. This is an investigation. We've received intelligence suggesting prohibited xenobiological research is being conducted on Ephyra. Research involving an unregistered, potentially dangerous alien species. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled colonists. Since the Orion crisis, fear of unknown alien life forms had become deeply ingrained in frontier settlements. "That's a serious accusation," Alric replied evenly. "May I ask the source of this intelligence?" "You may not," Harlow snapped. "Alliance security protocols are not subject to the curiosity of frontier medical officers, especially those with a history of insubordination." The settlement's governor, a weathered woman named Eliza Tran, stepped forward. "Captain, with all due respect, Commander Voss has served this community faithfully for 3 years. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, present it formally. Otherwise, these accusations serve only to create fear and division." Harlow's expression soured. "Very well, Lieutenant, the evidence." A young officer stepped forward, activating a holographic display. Alric's heart sank as he recognized the medical requisition forms projected in the air, forms for specialized genetic sequencing equipment, atmospheric regulators, and rare compounds used in xenobiological research, all signed by him. "Additionally," Harlow continued, clearly enjoying himself, "our sensors detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the commander's personal quarters. Signatures consistent with advanced life support systems, not registered in the settlement's medical inventory." Alric maintained his composure, with effort. "My research into frontier diseases requires specialized equipment. The energy signatures are from experimental treatments for radiation poisoning, affecting several of our miners. All documented in my reports to the Medical Council." "Indeed," Harlow raised an eyebrow. "Then you won't mind if my team inspects your facility. Standard procedure, of course." Before Alric could respond, the chamber doors burst open, and Lieutenant Jan rushed in, his uniform disheveled and a wild look in his eyes. "Governor! Commander!" he gasped. "The northern perimeter! Radiation storm approaching! Category 5! The chamber erupted in chaos. Category 5. Radiation storms were rare, but deadly, capable of overwhelming standard shielding and causing horrific injuries to anyone caught unprotected. Governor Tran immediately took charge. "Activate emergency protocols. All civilians to shelter. Medical teams on standby." Harlow looked suspicious but couldn't ignore the threat. "This inspection will continue after the emergency has passed," he declared, before turning to his team. "Secure the ship and prepare medical assistance." As the chamber emptied, Jan pulled Alric aside. "There's no storm," he whispered. "But Sayuri says we have 15 minutes at most before their sensors figure that out." Alric nodded grimly. "Get to the evacuation point. I'll meet you there." Outside, the settlement had erupted into organized chaos, with colonists rushing to designated shelters and emergency teams deploying radiation shields. In the confusion, Alric slipped away, making his way through back alleys toward his quarters. He found Sayuri, waiting with Zira secured in a portable life support pod. The alien child was agitated, her blue glow pulsating rapidly as she sensed the tension around her. "The emergency shuttle is prepped," Sayuri reported, her voice tight with stress. "But there's a problem. The lab. I couldn't destroy all the evidence in time. If Harlow's team finds it, they'll have proof and they'll hunt us across the galaxy," Alric finished. "I'll handle it. Get Zira to the shuttle. Jan will meet you there." Sayuri hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Alric checked his sidearm again. "Buy you time. Now go." After they left, Alric moved quickly through his quarters, gathering critical data and destroying what couldn't be taken. He had just set the lab's self-destruct sequence when the door burst open. Captain Harlow stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security officers, their weapons drawn. "I knew you were lying," he said, his voice cold with triumph. "There is no radiation storm, just a desperate attempt to cover your treason." Alric straightened, placing himself between Harlow and the hidden passage Sayuri had used. "It's not treason to save a life." "A life?" Harlow laughed harshly. "That thing isn't a life. It's a potential threat to every human in this sector. Have you forgotten the Orion crisis? Millions dead because someone like you thought they knew better than Alliance protocols." "This is different," Alric insisted. "She's just a child." "She?" Harlow's eyes narrowed. "You've anthropomorphized an unknown alien species, formed an emotional attachment, just like before, Voss. Your sentimentality endangered your entire squad then. How many will die this time because of your weakness?" The words struck deep, reopening old wounds. Alric felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on him, the faces of his lost squad members flashing before his eyes. But then, he remembered Zira's touch, the healing warmth, the innocent trust in her three-eyed gaze. "You're wrong," Alric said quietly. "What happened at Orion was a tragedy, but blindly destroying what we don't understand isn't the answer. Sometimes compassion is the stronger choice." Harlow's face twisted with disgust. "Always the philosopher. Arrest him," he ordered his men. "And find that creature. I want it contained and ready for transport within the hour." The security officers moved forward, but Alric was ready. With a swift motion, he drew his sidearm and fired, not at the men, but at the environmental control panel on the wall. The lights went out as emergency protocols engaged, plunging the room into darkness save for the red emergency lighting. In the confusion, Alric slipped through the hidden passage, sealing it behind him. The lab's self-destruct would activate in minutes, destroying the evidence but leaving the building intact. He wasn't willing to risk innocent lives, even to protect Zira. As he raced through the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the settlement, Alric's comm unit crackled to life. "Commander!" Jan's voice came through, breathless and urgent. "Alliance forces have secured the spaceport. They're checking all vessels. We can't take the emergency shuttle." Alric cursed under his breath. "Where are you now?" "Maintenance Bay 7, with Sayuri and the package. But we're trapped. They've got patrols everywhere." Alric's mind raced, considering and discarding options until only one remained. Desperate and dangerous, but their only chance. "Hold your position," he ordered. "I'm coming to you. And Jan, prepare the atmospheric harvester." There was a pause on the other end. "The harvester? Sir, that's—" "Our only way out," Alric cut him off. "Just be ready." The atmospheric harvester was an industrial machine used to collect and process the unique gases in Ephyra's upper atmosphere. Gases valuable for certain medical applications. It wasn't designed for passengers, had minimal life support, and was notoriously difficult to control. But it could reach orbit, and it wasn't on the Alliance's list of potential escape vessels. As Alric navigated the tunnels, a distant explosion told him the lab's self-destruct had activated. Harlow would be furious, which meant they had even less time than he'd thought. When he finally reached Maintenance Bay 7, he found Jan standing guard at the entrance, while Sayuri attended to Zira's life support pod. The alien child was clearly distressed, her normally blue glow taking on a reddish tinge. "Her vital signs are fluctuating," Sayuri reported, as Alric approached. "The portable unit isn't maintaining the optimal atmospheric mix. We need to get her to a stable environment soon." Alric nodded grimly. "The harvester is our only option. It has an atmospheric processing chamber that we can modify for her." Jan looked skeptical. "Even if we make it to orbit, where do we go? The Alliance will have every patrol ship in the sector looking for us." "The Nomad Expanse," Alric replied, already moving toward the harvester's access hatch. "The asteroid fields and radiation belts make it impossible to track vessels. We can find sanctuary with the free colonies there until we figure out our next move." As they worked to prepare the harvester, alarms began blaring throughout the settlement. Harlow was done playing games. "They're implementing lockdown procedures," Jan warned. checking the security feed on his datapad. We have maybe 5 minutes before they seal all exterior hatches. Ulrich finished the modifications to the processing chamber, creating a makeshift life support system for Zira. Get her inside, he instructed Sayuri. Jan, prime the engines but wait for my signal to launch. What are you doing? Sayuri asked, carefully transferring Zira to the chamber. Creating a distraction, Ulrich replied, heading for the bay's control station. Something big enough to draw their attention and override the lockdown. Working quickly, Ulrich accessed the settlement's environmental systems. With a few careful adjustments, he triggered an emergency venting of the atmospheric storage tanks on the far side of the settlement. A non-lethal, but spectacular diversion that would force emergency protocols to supersede the lockdown. As alarms changed tone, indicating the new emergency, Ulrich rejoined the others at the harvester. Now, Jan, get us out of here. The harvester's engines roared to life, vibrating the entire structure as Jan guided it toward the now opening bay doors. Outside, chaos reigned as emergency teams rushed to contain the venting gas, while Alliance security forces found themselves pulled in multiple directions. As they cleared the bay and accelerated toward the upper atmosphere, Ulrich caught a glimpse of Captain Harlow, standing on a landing platform, watching their escape with undisguised fury. Their eyes met for a brief moment across the increasing distance, and Ulrich knew with certainty that this wasn't over. The harvester shuddered violently as they hit the upper atmosphere. The vessel, never designed for such a rapid ascent. Warning lights flashed across the makeshift control panel, and Sayuri fought to keep Zira's chamber stable as the turbulence threatened to tear it from its moorings. "Alliance vessels deploying from the patrol ship!" Jan shouted over the noise. 3 interceptors, on an intercept course. Ulrich took the controls, pushing the harvester beyond its design limitations. "Dump the collection tanks. We need the speed." Jan complied, jettisoning the valuable atmospheric gases to gain precious acceleration. The harvester lurched forward, but the interceptors were closing fast. "They're within weapons range," Jan reported grimly. In the processing chamber, Zira's distress had reached a critical point. Her body glowed bright red now, pulsating rapidly. "Something's happening," Sayuri called out, her voice tight with concern. "Her energy readings are off the charts." Before Ulrich could respond, Zira's body suddenly emitted a brilliant flash of blue-white light that engulfed the entire vessel. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The warnings, the vibrations, even time itself. When Ulrich's vision cleared, he was astonished to see the harvester now moving at incredible speed, the interceptors falling rapidly behind. "What just happened?" Jan gasped, staring at the instruments in disbelief. Sayuri was already analyzing the readings. "Some kind of energy pulse. It didn't just increase our speed. It created a localized disruption in space-time, like a miniature jump drive." Ulrich looked at Zira, who had returned to her normal blue glow, but appeared exhausted by the effort. "She saved us," he said softly. As the harvester sped toward the safety of the nomad expanse, Ulrich felt both awe and a deepening sense of responsibility. Zira wasn't just a child in need of protection. She was something more, something with capabilities they were only beginning to understand. And somehow, against all odds, she had chosen him as her protector, her father. The free colony of Haven existed in the shadow of giants, literally, built within and around a massive asteroid field known as the Titan's Graveyard. Its structures were a hodgepodge of salvaged ships, hollowed-out rocks, and ingenious, self-sustaining habitats. Here, far from Alliance control, a community of scientists, political refugees, and those simply seeking freedom had created a life on their own terms. 6 months had passed since their desperate flight from Ephyra. 6 months of constantly moving, staying one step ahead of Alliance patrols. 6 months of watching Zira grow and develop at an astonishing rate. Ulrich stood at the viewport of their current home, a retrofitted science vessel embedded in one of the larger asteroids, watching Zira as she floated in the zero-gravity garden they had created for her. Now, nearly the size of a human 4-year-old, she moved with grace through the exotic plants, her blue glow causing some of them to bloom as she passed. "She's getting stronger every day," Sayuri remarked, coming to stand beside him. The months in hiding had changed her. Gone was the pristine scientist, replaced by a more pragmatic survivor, with practical clothing and hair cropped short for convenience. Yet her brilliant mind remained as sharp as ever. "Too strong, perhaps," Ulrich replied quietly. "The incident yesterday." Sayuri nodded grimly. "The spatial distortion when she became frightened by the meteor shower." "Yes. I've been analyzing the data. Her abilities are developing faster than we anticipated. The bioelectric field she generates has properties we're only beginning to understand." In the garden, Zira had noticed them watching and waved excitedly, her 3 eyes bright with recognition. She had begun speaking in recent weeks, a combination of mimicked human speech and the musical tones of what they assumed was her native language. "Father," she called, her voice carrying the crystalline quality that made it instantly recognizable. "Look!" She held out her hands, and a small sphere of blue energy formed between them, condensing until it took the shape of a tiny star that spun and sparkled. "Remarkable!" Sayuri breathed. "Her fine control is improving exponentially." Ulrich smiled and waved back, but concern lingered beneath his pride. Every new ability Zira displayed made her more miraculous and more dangerous in the eyes of those who would exploit or destroy her. The door behind them slid open, and Lieutenant Jan entered, his expression grim. Jan had committed fully to their fugitive existence, using his military training and connections to keep them one step ahead of pursuit. He'd grown a beard to alter his appearance and adopted the casual dress of the free colonists. But his military bearing remained unmistakable. "We have a problem," he announced without preamble. "Alliance communication chatter has spiked in the last 12 hours. They're mobilizing for something big." Ulrich turned from the viewport. "Have they found us?" "Not exactly." Jan activated a holographic display showing news feeds from across the sector. "They've found something else. Another ship, similar to the one Zira was rescued from. This one intact, with occupants in stasis." The news struck like a physical blow. "Where?" Ulrich demanded. "Outer Rim, Sector 47. A mining vessel discovered it, hidden in an asteroid field." Jan's expression darkened further. "Harlow has been given command of the retrieval operation." Sayuri looked back at Zira, who was still playing happily in the garden, unaware of the momentous news. Her people, they could still be alive. "Or it could be a trap," Jan cautioned. "Harlow knows we'd be interested in this news. He could be using it to draw us out." Ulrich considered their options, watching Zira create another small star between her palms. "Whether it's a trap or not, we have to investigate. Zira deserves to know if others of her kind exist. And the scientific implications are enormous," Sayuri added. "If we could study their biology, their technology, we might better understand Zira's abilities and how to help her control them." Jan looked skeptical. "The Alliance has the site locked down tight. Getting close won't be easy, and even if we manage it, extracting survivors from under Harlow's nose would be nearly impossible." "We won't be alone," Ulrich said, a plan already forming in his mind. Haven isn't the only place that remembers what the Alliance was supposed to stand for before fear took over. I still have contacts, people who believe in the original Charter's promise to respect and protect all sentient life. "You're talking about the Reformation movement," Jan realized. "They're considered terrorists by the Alliance." "Freedom fighters," Ulrich corrected. "And they have resources we need, including stealth ships that can get us close to Sector 47 undetected." Sayuri looked troubled. "Even with help, It's a tremendous risk. And what about Zira? We can't take her into danger, but leaving her behind. As if sensing she was being discussed, Zira floated to the viewport, pressing her small hands against the transparent barrier. Her 3 eyes found Alric's, and he felt the now familiar touch of her mind against his. Not words exactly, but emotions and images conveying curiosity, concern, and something like determination. She knows, Alric said softly. Somehow, she already knows something's happening. He placed his hand against the viewport, matching it to Zira's on the other side. In that moment, he felt a surge of protectiveness, so fierce it took his breath away. This child, this miraculous being from across the stars, had become his daughter in every way that mattered. And a father would move galaxies to give his child her birthright. "We'll need a diversion," Jan was saying, already thinking tactically. "Something to split the Alliance forces. And a way to verify if the stasis pods contain Zira's people before we commit to extraction," Sayuri added. Ulrich nodded, his resolve hardening. "Make the preparations. I'll contact the Reformation. We move as soon as possible." As Jan and Sayuri left to begin arrangements, Ulrich remained at the viewport with Zira. Through the barrier, he felt her mind touch his again, this time sending a clear image, herself, standing among others like her, their blue glow joining to create something beautiful and profound. "Yes, little star," he whispered, "we're going to find your family." What he didn't say, couldn't say, was the fear that gnawed at him, that finding Zira's people might mean losing her, that she might choose to return to her own kind, leaving him behind. The thought was a physical ache in his chest, but he pushed it aside. A true father puts his child's needs above his own pain. In the garden, Zira's blue glow pulsed in time with his heartbeat, a silent promise of connection that transcended biology. Whatever came next, that bond would remain. The Alliance research facility orbiting Sector 47 was a marvel of military engineering, a massive structure of gleaming metal and reinforced composite materials, bristling with defense systems and surrounded by a protective fleet of patrol vessels. From their hiding place behind the system's outermost moon, Alric studied the facility through the stealth ship's enhanced sensors. 14 patrol ships, automated defense platforms at all approach vectors, and a full battalion of security personnel. Jan reported grimly. They're not taking any chances. Beside them, Dr. Eli Rosen, their contact from the Reformation movement, nodded in agreement. The Alliance Council is treating this discovery as a top priority. The rumors say they've already revived one of the aliens for preliminary testing. Ulrich's jaw tightened at the euphemism. Testing likely meant invasive procedures that the subject wouldn't survive. The thought of Zira's people being treated as lab specimens made his blood boil. "What about our operative inside?" he asked, turning to Rosen. "Still in place and undetected. According to their last transmission, the stasis ship contains 12 individuals, all in suspended animation except for the one they've examined." Rosen's expression darkened. "The subjects appear to be of the same species as your Zira, though with significant physiological differences. Most are considerably larger and have more developed neural structures." "Adults," Sayuri concluded. "Zira is still a child, physically and developmentally. These could be her parents, her teachers, or her creators," Alric thought but didn't say. The question of whether Zira had been born or engineered remained unanswered, and the implications were troubling either way. "The diversion is in place," Jan reported, checking his tactical display. "The Reformation fleet will engage Alliance patrols in Sector 49 in exactly 3 hours. That should draw away at least half of the defensive force." Ulrich nodded. "And our infiltration team?" "Ready. Dr. Nakamura's biological countermeasures should mask our life signs from their sensors long enough to dock with the emergency airlock on the facility's underside." The plan was audacious, perhaps suicidal, but it was their only chance. While the Reformation forces created a diversion, a small team consisting of Alric, Sayuri, Jan, and 2 Reformation operatives would infiltrate the facility, locate the stasis ship, and extract as many survivors as possible. Zyra had been left behind at Haven, protected by trusted allies. The parting had been difficult, her distress manifesting in pulses of red energy that had temporarily disrupted Haven's power systems. But Alric had promised to return with answers, if not with her own people. "It's time," Rosen announced, checking the chronometer. "The Reformation fleet is moving into position." As they boarded the infiltration vessel, a stripped-down scout ship modified with experimental stealth technology, Alric felt the familiar pre-mission tension he'd known from his military days. But this time, the stakes were far more personal. "For Zira," Sayuri said quietly, taking her place beside him. Alric nodded. "For Zira." The infiltration went more smoothly than they had dared hope. The diversion worked perfectly, drawing away the bulk of the defensive fleet. Sayuri's biological countermeasures, derived from her research on Zira's unique physiology, confounded the facility's sensors just long enough for their ship to slip through the defensive grid and dock with the emergency airlock. Once inside, they moved swiftly through maintenance corridors, guided by schematics provided by their insider. The facility was operating with a skeleton crew, most personnel having been reassigned to the defensive fleet, but they still had to avoid security patrols and automated surveillance systems. "The research wing is 2 levels down," Jan whispered, consulting his datapad. "According to our intel, that's where they're keeping the stasis ship." They made their way down, using forged access codes to bypass security barriers. As they approached the research wing, Alric felt a strange sensation, a familiar touch against his mind, similar to Zira's telepathic communication but stronger, more focused. "Do you feel that?" he asked Sayuri, who nodded, her expression concerned. "Telepathic probing. Similar to Zira's abilities but more sophisticated. One of her people must be conscious and sensing our presence." They reached the main laboratory doors, using the final access code to enter. What they found inside stopped them in their tracks. The alien stasis ship dominated the center of the vast chamber, a sleek, organic-looking vessel that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Much like Zira's skin, around it, Alliance scientists worked at various stations, monitoring readings and conducting tests. And suspended in a containment field at the far end of the lab was one of Zira's people. Unlike Zira, this being was clearly an adult, taller than a human, with the same translucent blue skin but more defined features. Its 3 eyes were larger, more expressive, and currently fixed on the new arrivals with unmistakable intelligence. Unlike Zira's childlike form, this being had more articulated limbs and a cranial structure that suggested advanced neural development. "Magnificent," Sayuri breathed, momentarily forgetting their mission in her scientific awe. Alric was about to signal their next move when a familiar voice cut through the laboratory. "I knew you'd come, Voss. Sentiment makes you so predictable." Captain Harlow stepped out from behind the stasis ship, flanked by security officers with weapons drawn. His uniform now bore the insignia of a Commodore, a promotion, no doubt, for his role in capturing the alien vessel. "Commodore now, is it?" Alric remarked, mind racing for a way out of this trap. Experimenting on helpless beings must come with good benefits. Harlow's face hardened. "This is scientific research vital to Alliance security. These beings possess technology and biological capabilities that could revolutionize our defenses, or destroy us if weaponized by our enemies." "They're people, Harlow," Alric countered. "Sentient beings with rights, not resources to be exploited." "People," Harlow laughed harshly. "Your pet alien has clouded your judgment. Voss, these creatures aren't people, they're weapons, living weapons." He gestured to the suspended alien. This one has already demonstrated the ability to manipulate energy fields, disrupt electronic systems, and communicate telepathically. Imagine an army of them, deployed against our enemies. Ulrich felt sick at the thought. Is that what happened to the one you examined? You tried to turn it into a weapon? A flicker of something, perhaps shame, crossed Harlow's face before the cold mask returned. Sacrifices must be made for security. Surely you, of all people, understand that. After Orion. While they spoke, Ulrich noted Jan and the Reformation operatives subtly repositioning themselves. They had prepared for the possibility of a trap, with contingency plans in place. All they needed was a distraction. As if reading his thoughts, the suspended alien's body suddenly flared with brilliant blue light. The containment field surrounding it flickered and failed, alarms blaring throughout the facility. "Secure the subject!" Harlow shouted, as chaos erupted in the laboratory. In the confusion, Jan and the operatives sprang into action, subduing the security officers, while Sayuri rushed to the control panel, governing the stasis pods on the alien ship. Ulrich found himself face to face with Harlow, who had drawn his sidearm. "You're throwing away everything for these creatures," Harlow snarled. "Your career, your life, for what? Some misguided atonement for Orion?" "Not atonement," Ulrich replied, dodging as Harlow fired. "Understanding. Something you've never bothered to attempt." They fought across the laboratory, Harlow's military training evident in his precise movements. But Ulrich had spent the last months surviving as a fugitive, his skills honed by necessity and desperation. When Harlow lunged, Ulrich sidestepped and struck, sending the Commodore crashing into a console. Meanwhile, the freed alien had joined Sayuri at the stasis ship, its long fingers dancing over controls that responded to its touch. One by one, the stasis pods began to activate, their occupants stirring. "Ulrich!" Sayuri called urgently. "They're waking up, but the facility's security protocols are engaging. We have minutes at most before the automated defense systems lock down completely." Harlow, recovering from the blow, laughed through bloodied lips. "You'll never make it out. This facility is designed to contain threats exactly like you and your alien friends." As if to emphasize his point, heavy blast doors began closing throughout the laboratory, the facility's AI announcing security containment procedures. The freed alien approached Ulrich, its three eyes studying him intently. Then, to his shock, it spoke, not in words, but directly into his mind. "You care for one of our children." The telepathic voice was unlike Zira's emotional imagery. This was clear, articulate communication. Ulrich nodded, focusing his thoughts on Zira, sharing memories of caring for her, teaching her, loving her as his own. The alien's eyes widened, and a wave of emotion flowed through the telepathic link: surprise, gratitude, and a deep sadness. She is the last of her line, a genetically modified child, created to survive what we could not. We are her guardians, not her kind. This revelation stunned Ulrich. Not her kind? Then what? She is something new. The next evolution, designed to adapt and survive. Our final gift to the universe. More aliens were emerging from stasis now, each with the same translucent skin and three eyes, but with subtle variations in height, coloration, and features. They moved with purpose, some attending to the stasis ship systems, others joining the first alien in studying the humans. "We need to move now," Jan urged, securing the exit route. "The diversion fleet can't hold the Alliance forces much longer." The lead alien turned its attention to the closing blast doors, raising a hand. Blue energy flowed from its palm, forcing the doors to halt and then reverse, opening fully once more. "We will assist your escape," it communicated to all of them now, "in return for protecting our child." Sayuri, ever the scientist even in crisis, couldn't contain her questions. "Your physiology, your abilities, how is it possible? The energy manipulation, the telepathy, Questions for another time, the alien responded. Now we must survive. With the aliens' assistance, they fought their way back to the docking bay where their ship waited. The beings used their energy manipulation abilities to disable security systems, neutralize weapons, and create barriers against pursuers. It was awesome and terrifying to witness. Alric understood now why Harlow saw them as potential weapons. As they reached the ship, alarm klaxons announced the return of the Alliance fleet. Their window for escape was closing rapidly. "We can't fit them all," Jan reported grimly, surveying the 11 aliens now gathered in the docking bay. "Our ship's life support can handle 4, maybe 5 in addition to our team, but not 11. The lead alien communicated again, this time with a sense of calm purpose. "We will take our vessel. It was damaged but is still functional. Your ship will need to clear a path through the Alliance blockade." "That's suicide," Alric protested. "Your ship is unarmed, and the Alliance fleet will target you first." "We have defenses you do not understand," came the reply. "And protecting our child's future is worth any risk." There was no time to argue. As Harlow's reinforcements converged on the docking bay, they split up, Alric's team boarding their stealth ship while the aliens returned to their own vessel. As both ships prepared for launch, Alric received one final telepathic message. "Bring her to the celestial confluence when the twin stars align. We will be waiting." Then they were away, launching into space with Alliance pursuers close behind. True to their word, the alien ship generated some kind of energy field that confounded targeting systems, allowing both vessels to break through the blockade and escape into the asteroid field beyond. As they made the jump to safety, Alric felt a mixture of triumph and confusion. They had succeeded beyond expectations. Zyra's guardians were free and would survive. But the revelations about Zira herself raised as many questions as they answered. Not her kind, but something new. The next evolution. What did that mean for her future? And what was the celestial confluence? For now, all that mattered was returning to Haven, returning to Zira with the news that she was not alone in the universe. The rest would have to wait. The celestial confluence, as they discovered, was an astronomical phenomenon that occurred once every 87 years, when the binary stars at the heart of the nomad expanse aligned perfectly, creating a unique navigational channel through the normally impassable radiation belts. It would happen in just 3 weeks, barely enough time to prepare for whatever lay ahead. Back at Haven, Zira's reaction to the news about her guardians had been complex. Joy at knowing others like her existed, confusion about her true nature, and anxiety about the coming meeting. Her abilities had continued to develop at an astonishing rate, particularly after learning that she was not simply a child of her species, but something more, something designed for a greater purpose. Now, as their ship approached the coordinates provided by the aliens, Alric watched Zira standing at the viewport. At 7 months since her rescue, she had grown to the size of a human 8-year-old, her blue skin glowing with health and anticipation. The childlike proportions were giving way to a more defined form, and her telepathic abilities had advanced to clear, articulate communication. "Are you nervous?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. Zyra turned her 3 eyes to him, a gentle smile on her face. "Yes, but also excited. I have so many questions for them." "So do I," Alric admitted, "particularly about this next evolution business." Sayuri joined them, datapad in hand as always. "Based on my analysis of Zira's recent physiological changes, I believe her guardians engineered her as a kind of adaptive bridge species, capable of surviving in multiple environments and potentially capable of forming biological connections with other sentient life forms." "Is that why I can heal you?" Zyra asked, looking at her small hands that now glowed with a steady, controlled light. She had recently discovered how to focus her bioelectric field to accelerate cellular regeneration in others, a ability that had saved Jan's life when he was injured during a close encounter with an Alliance patrol. Possibly, Sayuri nodded. Your genetic structure seems designed to interact with and adapt to other biological systems. It's extraordinary. The ship's navigation system chimed, indicating they had reached the coordinates. Ahead, the twin stars of the Nomad Expanse had aligned perfectly, their combined gravitational pull creating a stable corridor through the radiation belts. And waiting at the center of this cosmic phenomenon was the aliens' vessel, now joined by two others of similar design. They've brought friends, Jan observed from the pilot's seat, a note of concern in his voice. As they approached, their communication system activated, and the lead alien's telepathic voice filled their minds. Welcome, Guardians of the Child. Please dock with our vessel for the convergence. Following the aliens' guidance, they docked with the lead ship. The airlock cycled, and they found themselves greeted by the same beings they had rescued from the Alliance facility. The leader, who had introduced itself as Talon, guided them through the organic corridors of the ship to a central chamber, unlike anything they had seen before. The room was a perfect sphere, its walls pulsating with the same blue light that emanated from the alien's skin. In the center floated a complex arrangement of crystalline structures that seemed to sing with subtle harmonics as they moved. The convergence chamber, Talon explained. Here, we will share with you the truth of our purpose and the child's destiny. Zyra moved forward as if in a trance, drawn to the crystalline structures. As she approached, they began to glow more intensely, responding to her presence. What is this place? Alric asked, watching with a mixture of wonder and apprehension. Our repository of knowledge and history, Talon replied, and the key to understanding what Zyra truly is. The crystals began to project images around them, stars, planets, civilizations rising and falling. The history of Talon's people unfolded before their eyes, an ancient species that had achieved great technological and biological advancement, only to discover that their evolutionary path had reached its end. Unable to adapt to changing cosmic conditions, they faced extinction. We knew our time was ending, Talon continued. But we sought to leave a legacy, a new form of life that could adapt where we could not, that could bridge the biological divide between species, creating harmony where isolation had led to conflict. The images shifted to show laboratories, genetic experiments, and finally, Zyra, or rather, the creation of the child who would become Zyra. She was not the first attempt, they learned, but the only success, a perfect balance of their genetic material, combined with adaptive capabilities that allowed her to survive conditions that would kill her creators. She is the first of what we hope will be many, a new species that can thrive in environments we cannot, that can form biological connections with other sentient beings, sharing healing, knowledge, and understanding across the divide of different evolutionary paths. Alric looked at Zyra, who was watching the history of her creation with rapt attention. You made her as a bridge between species, a peacemaker? More than that, Talon answered. A healer. Her ability to adapt her biological field to other life forms means she can potentially cure diseases, repair genetic damage, even extend lifespans. What you have witnessed in her healing touch is merely the beginning of capabilities that will grow as she matures. The implications were staggering. No wonder the Alliance had been so determined to capture and study Zyra and her guardians. Such abilities could transform medicine throughout the galaxy, or be weaponized in terrifying ways. Why tell us this now? Sayuri asked. Why bring us here? Talon turned its three eyes to her. Because we are dying. The damage done during our captivity cannot be reversed. Even with our advanced technology, within one planetary cycle, we will cease to exist. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Zyra made a sound of distress, moving toward Talon as if to heal him, but the alien gently stopped her. It cannot be prevented, child. But before we go, we must ensure your future, and the future of what you represent. One of the other aliens stepped forward, presenting a small, crystalline device. This contains our complete knowledge, scientific, cultural, historical, everything you will need to understand your abilities and your purpose. Her purpose should be her choice, Alric said firmly, not a destiny imposed by her creators. To his surprise, Talon agreed. Of course, we offer guidance, not commands. The path she walks must be her own. Zyra looked between Talon and Alric, confusion and sorrow evident in her expressive eyes. But I don't want you to die, she said to Talon, her voice carrying the musical quality that made it uniquely hers. I can help you. I've been practicing. Some journeys must end so that others may begin, Talon replied gently. But we do have one request, if you are willing. The aliens gathered around Zyra, their hands extended. A final convergence, a sharing of consciousness that will preserve a part of us within you. Not as controlling voices, but as memories and knowledge you can access as you grow. Zyra looked to Alric, seeking his guidance. In that moment, he saw not the miraculous being who could manipulate energy and heal with a touch, but his daughter, a child facing a decision no child should have to make. It's your choice, little star, he said softly. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. After a moment's consideration, Zyra nodded and stepped into the circle of aliens. They placed their hands gently on her shoulders, her head, her hands. Blue light began to flow between them, growing in intensity until it was almost too bright to watch. When it faded, the aliens stepped back, visibly weakened, but with expressions of profound peace. Zyra stood taller somehow, her blue glow deeper and more complex, patterns of light shifting beneath her skin like constellations. It is done, Talon announced. She carries now not just her own potential, but our history, our knowledge, and our hope. As they prepared to leave, Talon drew Alric aside for one final communication. She will need you more than ever now. The convergence has accelerated her development. Abilities that would have taken years to manifest may emerge much sooner. Guide her, protect her, but most importantly, love her as you have done. In you, she has found what we could never give her, a true father. Alric felt his throat tighten with emotion. I will, I promise. The Alliance will not stop searching, Talon warned. What she represents is too valuable, too potentially powerful. But there are others who will help. Allies across the galaxy who share our vision of a more connected future. The crystalline device contains their locations and access codes. With those final words of guidance, they departed the alien vessel, leaving Zyra's guardians to their chosen fate. As their ship pulled away, Zyra stood silently at the viewport, watching as the three alien vessels moved deeper into the celestial confluence, their hulls beginning to glow with building energy. What are they doing? Jan asked, monitoring the readings from the pilot's console. Zyra answered, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Returning to the stars. Their final journey. In a flash of brilliance that outshone even the binary stars. The three vessels seemed to transform into pure energy, expanding outward in a wave of blue light that washed over their ship like a gentle caress before dissipating into the cosmos. Silence fell in their small vessel as they all processed what they had witnessed. Finally, Sayuri spoke. The readings from that energy wave were extraordinary. It altered the radiation belts, made them less harmful. They transformed their deaths into something that gives life. Zyra nodded, turning from the viewport. Her three eyes held a new depth, a wisdom beyond her physical age. They showed me how. It's part of what I am, what I'm meant to do, transform harm into healing, She looked at Alric then, and he saw both the child he had rescued and something more, a being on the cusp of becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. "Father," she said, using the term that had begun as a human concept, but now held deeper meaning. "I understand now why you risked everything for me. You saw what I could be before I knew myself." Ulrich crossed to her, kneeling to meet her eyes. "I saw someone who needed help. Everything else, what you are, what you might become, that's secondary to the fact that you deserve to live and be free." Zyra smiled, touching his face in the gesture that had become their personal connection. Through the contact, he felt her gratitude, her love, and her determination to honor both her guardian's hopes and the values he had taught her. As they plotted a course back to Haven, Ulrich knew that their journey was just beginning. The Alliance would indeed continue hunting them. Harlow, humiliated by their escape, would be more determined than ever. And Zyra's developing abilities would present new challenges and responsibilities. But they wouldn't face these challenges alone. The allies Talon had mentioned, the knowledge contained in the crystal, the growing network of those who believed in a more connected future, all would help them forge a path forward. And perhaps, someday, even the Alliance itself would recognize that the fear that had driven it, since the Orion crisis, was holding humanity back from a greater destiny among the stars. 5 years passed. 5 years of movement and growth, of narrow escapes and unexpected alliances. 5 years of watching Zyra develop from a child into something between adolescent and adult, her physical form stabilizing somewhere between human and her guardian's appearance, her abilities expanding in ways that continually amazed and occasionally terrified those around her. The Reformation movement had grown into a significant political force, advocating for a return to the Alliance's original charter of peaceful cooperation among all sentient species. Their cause had been dramatically advanced by what had become known as the Zyra Protocol, a revolutionary medical treatment derived from Zyra's unique biology that could cure previously incurable diseases by temporarily synchronizing the patient's biological field with her own. Under Sayuri's careful guidance, the protocol had been developed without requiring Zyra's constant personal involvement, though certain cases still benefited from her direct touch. The results had been nothing short of miraculous. The Orion lung plague, once a death sentence, now curable. Genetic disorders that had plagued colonists for generations, reversible. Even aging itself slowed by the regenerative principles discovered through studying her healing abilities. The impact was too significant for even the most xenophobic elements of the Alliance to ignore. Public opinion had shifted dramatically, with increasing calls for recognition of Zyra's contributions and an end to her fugitive status. Today, on the neutral ground of Centauri Prime, representatives from the Alliance Council had agreed to meet with Ulrich and Zyra to discuss terms for a formal pardon and the establishment of what was being called the Xenobiological Cooperation Initiative. Ulrich adjusted the formal diplomatic attire that felt strangely constraining after years in frontier clothing. Beside him, Zyra appeared perfectly composed in a flowing garment designed to accommodate her unique physiology. Now, physically equivalent to a human 16-year-old. She had grown tall and graceful, her blue skin glowing with steady confidence. "Nervous?" he asked her, echoing the question from their journey to meet her guardians years before. Zyra smiled, her 3 eyes crinkling at the corners in a very human expression she had adopted from him. "Curious, mostly. It's been a long journey to this point." The doors to the diplomatic chamber opened, and they were ushered inside. The Alliance delegation was already seated, high-ranking officials from various departments, along with military representatives and scientific advisors. And at the center, now wearing an admiral's insignia, sat Harlow. His face had aged considerably in the intervening years, deep lines etched around his mouth and eyes. When he looked at Zyra, Ulrich could still see a flash of the old fear and suspicion, but it was tempered now with something like reluctant respect. "Commander Voss," Harlow began formally, "and Citizen Zira, thank you for agreeing to these negotiations." "Admiral Harlow," Alric acknowledged with a curt nod. "I trust we can set aside our past differences for the greater good." The negotiations were long and occasionally tense, but ultimately productive. The Alliance offered full pardons to Alric, Sayuri, Jan, and all others who had aided them. Zira would be granted legal status as a protected citizen of the Alliance, with autonomy over how and when her abilities would be used. In return, she would continue to share her healing capabilities through the carefully controlled Zira protocol, and would help train a new generation of xenobiologists in understanding cross-species medical applications. As the formal documents were prepared for signing, Harlow requested a private word with Alric. They stepped onto a balcony overlooking the Centauri capital, the first time they had been alone together since their confrontation years before. "I still don't entirely trust what she represents," Harlow admitted, watching Zira through the glass doors as she conversed easily with Alliance scientists. "Power like hers, it changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." "That's what you've never understood, Harlow," Alric replied. "It's not about power. It's about connection. What Zira represents isn't a threat to humanity. It's an opportunity to become something more than we've been. Something better." Harlow was silent for a long moment. "Perhaps," he finally conceded. "The results of the Zira protocol are undeniable. My own granddaughter would have died of Orion lung plague without it." This admission clearly cost him, and Alric felt an unexpected surge of sympathy for his longtime adversary. Fear was a powerful motivator, and Harlow had spent his career believing he was protecting humanity from the unknown. "She never wanted to be a weapon," Alric said quietly. "All she ever wanted was to fulfill the purpose her guardians created her for, to heal, to connect, to build bridges between different kinds of life." "And you?" Harlow asked, studying him. "What did you want when you risked everything for an alien child?" Alric smiled, watching as Zira laughed at something one of the scientists said, a musical sound that never failed to warm his heart. "To be a father. Nothing more complicated than that." Back inside, the formal ceremony proceeded with all the pomp the occasion demanded. As Alric signed the final document, officially ending their years as fugitives, he felt a profound sense of closure. The journey that had begun with a desperate decision to save a dying child had transformed not just his life, but potentially the future of human and alien relations throughout the galaxy. Later, as celebrations continued around them, Zira found a moment to speak privately with him. "They're calling you father of a new species in the official records," she said, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Rather dramatic, don't you think?" "Bureaucrats love their grand titles," Alric replied with a shrug. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Zira said, suddenly serious. "Not anyone. You saw past fear to possibility. You chose compassion when it would have been easier to follow rules. That's rarer than you think." She took his hand, and through their touch, he felt her sharing memories. The moment he'd first held her dying form. The countless nights he'd stayed by her side as she struggled to survive. The patient guidance as she learned to control her abilities. The unwavering protection even when it meant sacrificing his own safety and freedom. "My guardians gave me life," she said softly. "But you taught me how to live it. How to be not just what I was created to be, but who I choose to be." Around them, the future was already taking shape. Alliance scientists discussing collaborative projects with Reformation researchers. Diplomatic envoys from distant systems arriving to learn about the Zira protocol. Even representatives from newly discovered sentient species, drawn by the promise of peaceful cooperation. And at the center of it all, a former military commander who had once followed orders without question, and the alien child who had taught him, and perhaps an entire galaxy, that the greatest strength comes not from power or fear, but from the courage to see possibility in the unknown. Father of a new species, Alric mused, watching the diverse gathering with satisfaction. I suppose there are worse things to be remembered for. Zyra's blue glow pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat, a silent reminder of the connection that had started it all. Just Father has always been enough for me. And in the end, that was the title that mattered most.